Hello, hello. It is just me today, and it's early, so I normally don't do day streams. So this is a little bit of a surprise, and it's different for me. So, hello. Hey, Snark. Hey, Autistic Shill. JJ, thank you for coming in earlier. I hope you guys are doing well. Um, I saw that Kendra is doing a live later this evening on the Chris Watts case, so I've pinned her stream at the top. And I know that a lot of people are familiar with the Gypsy Rose case. Hey, Bliss Chris. But I have yet to see his trial other than the Gypsy testimony that we watched the other day or last week. I think it was last week. And so I figured since I was going to be watching it anyways, and I'm kind of starting from the beginning, I would watch it with you. So, yeah. I was just listening to a little bit of the Young Thug trial, and I did not realize it is on day 115. And I was just thinking to myself, those jury members have been sitting there off of work for so long. That is insane. I could not imagine. And I don't know when it's supposed to end. Hey, Barbie, or how long that trial is. Like, I wonder if they're sequestered or not, because that would be rough. Like being away from your family for that long. I haven't followed that case too much, but hey, Esmeralda. Good to see you guys. But I've only popped in to watch the Woody guy because I don't know why he was just a mess and comical to me. But other than that, I really haven't watched much of it. I mean, that's a lot of time to invest in a case if you're going to watch it. So, but I did see that his lawyer that was arrested was back in court, which he probably has been for a while. So, yeah. I hope you guys are doing well. So today we're just going to start from day 1. Have you guys seen the Nicholas Godejohn trial? Hey, sassy nerd girl. I mean, this is so old. It's like the quality difference is so noticeable. But thankfully they've broken it up, which I appreciate. So we'll see. Hopefully we get it done today, at least the first day. And then I already have the second day scheduled, and then that's on private right now. And then I will unprivate that while we're listening to the stream. So, but yeah, I guess we'll just get started on this and take it from there. Let me share my screen here. And I debated on where to start on this because there was some, basic trial motions and stuff, and I decided to skip that. So we're just going to start with the opening statements on this. I know that in the first like 7 minutes, it sounds a little bit crackly because I was concerned about that, but it does improve. So, and if there's any issues with audio, if it's too loud or too quiet, let me know. Hey, Julie, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. I know a lot of people are working right now, so I understand if you're in the bushes or have to watch replay. Alrighty.
May it please the court.
Yes.
Outside of Claudine Blanchard's bedroom door stood the defendant, dressed in all black, wearing blue latex gloves, holding a knife. For the defendant, he was in love with Gypsy Blanchard, Claudine's daughter. And as he stood there, the only thing that stood between him being with Gypsy was Claudine. And so he stood there holding that knife for a minute, considering and deliberating the murder of Claudine Blanchard. But this was not the first time the defendant deliberated. Before he got to the house and walked in the front door, he was handed the blue gloves and the knife. And he deliberated. In his words, he had two thoughts. A benevolent thought that he described as an angel, just take Gypsy and run. And a malevolent thought, a devil on the other shoulder that said, the bitch is dead. Even that wasn't the first time the defendant deliberated. Hours before getting to the house, he sat in his hotel room at the day's end, texting Gypsy, making sure everything was ready.
Now, just to let you guys know, this was in November of 2018 is when this trial took place. So, and it's hard to imagine that she is put on some sort of pedestal now, but I don't know. It's mind-blowing to me. And I really hope that it doesn't set some sort of precedent where people think that it's okay to do this sort of thing and become sensationalized.
Making sure the knife was ready, the gloves, duct tape, telling Gypsy that he was planning on wearing a scary outfit that would scare Claudine, and telling Gypsy not to underestimate his will to kill. That wasn't the first time the defendant deliberated. 36 hours prior, knowing he was coming to Springfield to murder Claudine. That bus stopped in 3 different cities as the defendant sat on it, knowing he was coming to Springfield to murder Claudine. That wasn't the first time the defendant deliberated. It was a year prior when the defendant, while speaking with his girlfriend Gypsy, was first introduced to the idea of killing Claudine Blanchard. A year prior.
Real quick, do you guys want me to speed this up? I can speed this up if it's too slow for you guys. I think it's at 1.225 right now, but I can speed it up if you guys prefer it.
The evidence will show
Just let me
that
know.
although it was Gypsy's idea, it was the defendant's deliberation that led to him standing outside of Claudine's bedroom door
Hey, Michelle.
with gloves on, dressed in black, holding a knife, and thinking the bitch is dead. And the evidence will show that after that deliberation on June 10th of 2015, he entered that bedroom and stabbed Claudine Blanchard to death. Back in June of 2015, Claudine Blanchard lived at 2103 West Volunteer Way with her daughter, Gypsy. And on June 14th of 2015, neighbors and friends of Claudine and Gypsy became concerned because they saw a Facebook post. It was posted on a joint account that Gypsy and Claudine shared, and the post hinted that Claudine was dead and that Gypsy had...
Kendra, I put the link to your live at the top of the chat, and I pinned it up there. So if you change the stream or anything, let me know, and I'll correct the link. Hey, Muggsy.
Been raped. These neighbors and concerned friends, they go to the house, nobody's answering, so they end up calling the Greene County Sheriff's Office. They respond. They're not able to get anyone to come to the door. Eventually, they make entry to the house. There's no sign of Gypsy, but Claudine Blanchard is found in the back bedroom, dead, face down, blood-soaked nightgown with multiple stab wounds. The police then try to determine who made this Facebook post. And they end up determining that it was made from a residence all the way in Waukesha County, Wisconsin, a residence that's associated with Nicholas Godejohn. At this point in the investigation, the police don't know if Gypsy's also a victim, if she's alive, if she's dead, and they don't know who Nicholas Godejohn is. But knowing that that's the location where the Facebook post originated.
Okay, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Oop, wrong one. Not sure if you're going live. Are you going to keep the same link or the same live, Kendra? Because the link should still work if you just change the date or time on it. But if you actually cancel it, then the link won't work.
They coordinate with the Waukesha County Sheriff's Office, who ends up serving a search warrant on that residence, and they find the defendant, Nicholas Godejohn, and they find Gypsy. To their surprise, Gypsy was not injured. She was not being held captive. They, for the first time, find out that Gypsy is there willingly as the defendant's girlfriend. And that's the first this relationship between the defendant and Gypsy Blanchard becomes known, after Claudine is dead. Both Gypsy and the defendant, you will hear a lot about their relationship. And it's bizarre. It starts in October of 2012 when they meet on Christian Dating for Free, an online site. And within just a few days of talking to each other, they decide to become committed. And they carry on for almost 3 years an almost exclusively online relationship where they communicate over Facebook, Yahoo Messenger, and Skype. You're going to hear about and see some of the dynamics of this relationship and how it started to become very sexual, and they introduced fantasy role-playing into their relationship. They each developed alter egos, evil sides, and they would fantasy role-play with one another while talking about sexual things using these alter egos. Eventually, the defendant learns that Gypsy, who he initially knew was in a wheelchair, didn't have to be in one. He learns that Gypsy is not happy at home, and he learns.
Have you guys seen any of her role play stuff? Her pictures? She's a little freak. She I don't know where she got these ideas from, but she had a promiscuous mind for sure.
That Claudine is never going to let Gypsy be with him. And it is around that time, back in May of 2014, a year before the murder, that Gypsy first introduces the idea to the defendant about killing her mom. And that idea is what culminates in the defendant ultimately standing outside of Claudine's door with that knife. And it was after deliberation, after considering alternatives. They considered alternative ways to be together. First, trying to get Claudine to like the defendant, or even trying to get Gypsy pregnant. But ultimately, after considering those alternatives, the defendant's deliberation that ended in Claudine's murder. Once the defendant and Gypsy are found in Waukesha County, they're taken to the sheriff's office there, and the defendant's taken to an interview. And he sits there for a long time because he has to wait for detectives from the Greene County Sheriff's Office to fly in. Eventually, Detective Angela Mahoney with the Greene County Sheriff's Office arrives, and she goes in and interviews the defendant. And you're going to see that interview. And throughout this week, what you're going to see is that the defendant, eventually he confesses to premeditation, confesses to deliberation, confesses to murder. But what you're going to also see is that all of the evidence that's found at the crime scene, it matches his confession. All of the evidence that's found in Waukesha County matches his confession, and everything else in between. Eventually, after giving Detective Mahoney a pre-planned lie that he and Gypsy had come up with, he looks at her, he takes a minute, and he says, "I'll admit it. I actually did stab her. I'll admit it." And he admits that he did it, not to save Gypsy, but so that they could be together. And from there, he walks the detective through what happened. How Gypsy had given him money to take a Greyhound bus from Wisconsin to Springfield. That he goes and he stays at the Days Inn to get ready. And you'll see surveillance video of the Days Inn. You'll see him checking in. And eventually, the defendant gets a cab that takes him from his hotel room to the residence at 2103 West Volunteer Way. He texts Gypsy that he's there. She meets him at the door with the blue latex gloves and the knife. He tells her to get to the bathroom, lock herself in there. And now we arrive where I began, where he's standing outside of her door with the knife. Except he describes what happens after. That after that minute, His
Okay,
final
let me show you guys this real quick. I'm gonna show you her little role play, whatever. Sweet little innocent um, girl in the wheelchair. Should pop up in the screen. There we go. So there's one. So nice. Like this was, I think she went by Emma Rose. And let me go to this one. And this is, whoop, no, opposite. There's that one. This one's kind of funny. So this was her, yeah, right, the Tinder pic. But this was her identity she was using on Facebook as Emma Rose. So just to give you guys a visual of what the prosecutor was talking about. So yeah, quite the freak in the sheets. Let me go back to the trial here. There we go.
deliberation, his final reflection. He goes inside. She's sleeping on her stomach. He straddles her, and he begins to stab her multiple times in the back, and he cuts the back of her neck. He describes stabbing her approximately 4 times.
I don't know what's up with the volume. Why
Going
it
deeper
cuts
than
out.
others because the knife is getting harder to pull back. He can tell that he punctures a lung. And that matches the autopsy that ultimately reveals that Claudine didn't have 4. She has 17 stab wounds to her back, to the back of her neck, and she had deep cuts to her neck that went all the way to the vertebrae of her neck. The defendant describes her screaming and some statements that he made to her as he's murdering her. Then he talks about afterwards the fact that he went and got Gypsy from the bathroom and that they began to clean up. He adds that he asked Gypsy to clean up the blood naked because that turned him on. And that after cleaning up, as Claudine's dead, knife-ridden body is laying in her bedroom, the defendant and Gypsy actually go into Gypsy's room and have sex. They then ultimately pack up, take a taxi to the Days Inn, a Greyhound to Wisconsin, and that's ultimately where they're found. Before they get on that Greyhound bus, they take the knife and they take those blue latex gloves and they actually go to the post office, put them in an envelope, and mail them to the defendant's residence in Wisconsin so they don't get caught on the bus with it. And that matches what's found in the defendant's room in Wisconsin. They find the envelope with the knife, the gloves, that ends up having Claudine's DNA on the blade and a mixture of the defendant, Gypsy, and Claudine's DNA on the handle. You'll see this confession. You'll hear the physical evidence. You'll see how everything matches up. Ultimately, what is going to tie it together is the online persona and the online world that the defendant and Gypsy lived in. Computers were seized, cell phones were seized, and you get the full picture by reading and hearing the defendant's conversations, not with police, when he didn't think people were listening. You see that about a year prior, he talks on Facebook with a friend about their plan to kill Claudine, and that they're going to put it off for a while and try a different approach. They're going to first see if the defendant can meet Claudine and maybe she'll like it. Well, that doesn't work. They also talk more about this idea to maybe get Gypsy pregnant. That doesn't work. The killing was always supposed to be the last resort. But then, by May of 2015, after reflecting on these alternatives, the defendant's computer search history shows he had already reflected and he had deliberated and he had agreed and chose to murder. He searches for bondage tape, tasers, knives, tactical knives, a jungle primitive knife, a SEAL team knife. And then lastly, you'll see the text messages between the defendant and Gypsy from about 2 weeks prior to the murder all the way up until he is standing out of the door. And what you're going to see and what the evidence will show is that, yes, this was Gypsy's idea, but the defendant on June 10th was ready to kill, and these texts show he was enjoying it. He was looking forward to it. He was excited about it. You'll see text messages while he's waiting in his hotel room, waiting to take the cab to murder Claudine, that yes, Gypsy's idea, but it's the defendant who's texting Gypsy saying, making sure he knows where the address is, making sure the knife and the gloves are ready. It's the defendant who asks if the floor squeaks, if Claudine is a heavy or a light sleeper. When Gypsy responds to him she's a light sleeper, he says he's getting excited. It's the defendant that tests he's going to wear an outfit that will scare Claudine. It's the defendant that suggests he's going to finish Claudine no matter what and not to underestimate his will to kill. And you'll see those texts go all the way up to where he's standing outside the door and he tells Gypsy to come in. And lastly, you'll hear an interview the defendant did with the media in January of this year where he describes what his thought process was as he stood outside the door ready to kill Claudine. And he describes the liberation that we will ask you to find him guilty of first-degree murder.
Thank you. Mr. Dean?
Yes, sir. May it please the court.
Jeez,
Good
so
morning.
much louder. This one is
Nicholas
really crackly
Godejohn,
for
staff,
a few minutes.
And killed Miss Claudine Blanchard.
Like,
We're not
it's god
contesting
awful.
that. We're here because the state has charged Nick with murder in the first degree. You'll hear some evidence that Nick was autistic, and perhaps he was unable to form the necessary intent to commit murder in the first degree.
Hey,
With everything
JJ.
said and done, I ask that you find Nick not guilty of murder in the first degree and consider other means of homicide. Now, Nick didn't come into this world like most of us. He was born in the spring of 1989. He was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. His tiny brain was deprived of oxygen, and his family knew that there were going to be developmental delays. Nick went to school, in elementary school. He was diagnosed with autism. Nick was raised by his mother, a single mother at the time, who went through boyfriends back and forth. She worked several jobs to try to make ends meet, but she didn't give Nick the emotional support he needed. She was often absent, wasn't there. Nick's time was spent on the internet. He stayed in an upstairs bedroom on Cherry Street in Big Bend, Wisconsin, and that was his outlet to the world. And while on that computer, he met Gypsy Blanchard in October 2012 on a Christian dating site. It wasn't too long before they were in love. Nick loved Gypsy with all his heart. Now,
You guys, I'm gonna let this play a second. I'm gonna holler for Rye because Kuma is puking under my desk. So I will be right back.
Nick was autistic, had a different perception of the world. And Gypsy knew he was autistic. She accepted that. Nick knew that Gypsy was in a wheelchair, and he accepted that. But it didn't take too long for Nick to learn from Gypsy that she didn't need to be in that wheelchair. And this is what the world was led to believe. Gypsy's mother kept her in this condition for charity, sympathy, attention, money, for a number of reasons. Gypsy was held captive in this wheelchair. At one point in time, I believe in 2011, Gypsy tried to escape. She left the house, walking without a wheelchair, made a phone call, and had a friend pick her up. It didn't take too long for Claudine Blanchard, Dee Dee, Gypsy's mother, to pick her up. Gypsy was taken home, she was chained in bed, she was beaten with clothes hangers. Gypsy was not allowed to leave her mother. She wasn't allowed.
Sorry, guys. I'm scooting over a little bit so Rye can come under my desk and clean up Kuma's mess. So if you hear some noises or whatever, it's either the dog or him.
To be free. And she wanted a relationship outside of her home. She wanted a relationship with Nick. They talked about murder a year before it happened. But Gypsy formulated another plan. Why don't I try to bring you into my life? Introduce you, my mom will get to know you, and we'll go from there. Gypsy stole some money from her mom, sent it to Nick, purchased a bus ticket. Nick drove down on a bus from Wisconsin for the first time in 2015, in March of 2015, and stayed in a hotel that Gypsy paid for. Now, the idea was that they were going to go to an IMAX movie. They're going to go see Cinderella together. And they did. They both met there at the movie theater, talked to one another as if they'd never met before, like they didn't have any idea who each other was. And Gypsy's hope was that she would bond with this man in front of her mother, develop a friendship, and that her mother would accept that. Ultimately, they sat next to one another during that movie, and eventually they were able to get out of the theater. They went into the men's room and had sexual intercourse. When they went back into the theater, Gypsy's mother made sure they didn't sit next to one another. And Gypsy was heartbroken. She wanted her mom to accept Nick, and her mom described Nick as creepy. Gypsy knew there was only one way she was going to be able to spend a life with Nick. There was only one way to get out from under the grasp of her mother, and that was to kill her mother. Gypsy formulated this plan, and she wavered on it. For a while, she was committed to it. Later, she decided
You know, it is crazy that she was only sentenced to 10 years and served 8 and she's out. Like, that's crazy to me. And she was basically the mastermind of this.
no, that's not the right thing. Nick was happy to do whatever Gypsy wanted. He was always compliant. And finally, Gypsy said, it's getting worse here. This has to be done. She stole some more money from her mother, provided that to Nick to come down on a bus and stay in a hotel. She stole a knife from Walmart so that Nick could use that as a murder weapon, and provided Nick with gloves and tape and everything he would need to go through with her plan. Nick arrived there at the house. The knife was ready, gloves were ready, tape was ready. He entered that home and saw Gypsy standing there. A girl who could walk, not someone captive in a wheelchair. Looking around the living room, there were wheelchairs. The devices that bound her. And Nick went through with Gypsy's plan. Before they left town, they mailed the knife back to Wisconsin. Gypsy got everything ready for that. They put Gypsy's address there in a volunteer way as the return address. They dropped it in the mail. And they went to Wisconsin. Once they got to Wisconsin, Gypsy put a Facebook post on a shared account, an account she shared with her mother, that said, the bitch is dead, etc., etc. The goal there, and Gypsy will tell you this, was that she wanted her mother's body to be found. She wanted her mother to have a proper burial. And Gypsy will also tell you that she never thought she would be caught, that people would just forget about her, that they would bury her mom, and the world would move on. Before she left the house, she stole approximately $5,000 from her mom that her mom kept in the house in cash. Her goal was to start a new life with that. Her and Nick would live off that money for a while, and then start a family together. You're going to hear testimony about.
Like, how do you think you can get away with that and life would just go on as if it was nothing? Like, you have to be completely delusional to think that you can get away with that. Thank you, babe.
Nick's autism. You're probably going to hear from a couple of doctors who are going to tell you Nick is autistic. He has a low IQ. He suffers cognitive disabilities. And in the end, folks, you're going to understand the dynamics of this case, that Nick wasn't able to formulate the necessary mental state to commit murder in the first degree. I expect you'll find Nick not guilty of murder in the first degree. And you will have the opportunity to consider lesser degrees of homicide. I ask that you keep an open mind, and I appreciate your attention this morning.
Tasked by statute with investigating any
Yes.
the court.
Yes.
Will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Keep your voice up and face the jury, okay?
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Say your name for the record, please.
Michael Lee Robertson.
How are you employed?
I'm a Greene County Sheriff Deputy.
How long have you worked for the Sheriff's
Almost
Office?
18 years.
What is your current assignment?
I work with our civil division now.
What does that mean, Mr. General?
What's his name? Deputy Mike Robertson. Is he talking fast? Maybe. Hold on, let me slow it down a minute.
We do protection orders, various civil papers, evictions, writ of body attachments, which are warrants, things like that.
Is that a job you sought within the Sheriff's Office?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and, you want you got to say yes or no.
Yes, sir.
We're at part-time, typing down,
Yes,
as
sir.
you normally thought. What did you do for the Sheriff's Office in June of 2015?
I was a patrol deputy.
Could you talk to the jury a little bit about what the duties of a patrol deputy are?
Various functions, criminal investigation, some accident, traffic investigations, or traffic stops, or things like that. It's about things, that's usually what it is, working cases and taking initial reports for cases and stuff like that.
Responding to 911 dispatches?
Yes.
I want to take you back to June 14th of 2015. On that day in the afternoon, did you have an occasion to be dispatched to 2103 West Volunteer Way?
Yes.
Is that a location here in Greene County?
Yes.
What was it that caused you to be dispatched to that location?
It came out as a check of well-being for two residents in that, two individuals in that residence.
And was there something about in the notes in the
Is that too loud? Or too fast, too slow? You guys just let me know.
dispatch notes about why you were going there to check the well-being of the residents?
Yes, something about Facebook posts that friends of the two individuals had received saying that they had possibly been raped and murdered, or either or.
And so did you respond to that location?
Yes, sir.
Were there other deputies who responded there with you?
Yes, sir.
Deputy, let me get this whole question out before you answer.
Deputy Robertson, I'm going to show you a series of photos here that are marked. You can see they're marked on the back with the state's exhibit sticker. The state's exhibits 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you just take a moment and look at those.
This is a random thought, but if you think about it, this was in 2018, right? And that really wasn't that long ago. And just like the hairstyles, the quality of this it looks so old. And I'm like, okay, it's 2024. Like, are we going to look back on this and think that our streams now look like shit? I mean, these look like they're from like the 80s or the 90s or something. I don't know. It's just a really random thought.
Deputy Robertson, in general, what are we looking at in state's exhibits 1 through 5?
The residence in which I responded to?
At 2103 West Volunteer Way?
Yes.
And I noticed there's some crime scene tape at some of those pictures.
Yes.
And that would not have been there when you arrived?
No, sir.
Other than that, these state's exhibits 1 through 5 barely and accurately depict the exterior of the residence?
Yes.
I'd move to admit state's exhibits 1 through 5.
No objection, Your Honor.
They'll be admitted without objection.
Can you see that, Debbie?
Yes, sir.
Can everyone see the screen?
Can you all see it okay? All right.
When you got to, well, we've got the first picture. Let's look at state's exhibit 1 here. Is that the residence we've been discussing?
Yes.
The pink one with the white railings and ramps?
Yes.
When you got to that location, what did you find?
The vehicle in question sitting in the driveway, and it looked just pretty much like that.
When you say the vehicle, you're talking about the Nissan Cube there?
Yes.
And was there
These are
anyone
my
there when you
favorite
got there?
apples blisters.
They were
They're so good.
friends of the family there that initially made the 911 call.
And did you speak with them?
It was real brief, but Deputy Hughes spoke to them most of the time.
Did you check the residence to see if you could locate Claudine Blanchard, Gypsy Blanchard?
Yes.
Can you describe what you did to do that?
We checked the windows to see, and the door to see if there was any forced entry or any broken windows. We couldn't see in because the windows were blacked out. But we didn't see any signs of forced entry or anything like that.
And did you just check the front windows there, or did you check other parts of the residence?
We checked all the windows.
And so now looking at State's Exhibit 2, on the right side of the residence, looks like there's a window and door on that side as well?
Yes.
And you checked those?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit 3 is a different view of that side, correct?
It's not a bad looking house from the outside, but they just trashed the hell out of the inside. Like from the outside and they got this house from, what was it, Habitat for Humanity? Hey, Sheila. Yeah, Honeycrest apples are my favorite. Those are the only apples we eat too. We usually get them in like the packages from Costco.
Correct.
And what are we looking at now?
That is the back side or north side of the residence.
Can you check that
Right,
as well?
Snurk?
Yes.
It looks
And
good.
no signs of forced entry?
No, sir.
And now we can see the left side of the house there. Did you check that window as well?
Yes, sir.
And so, did you all knock on the door, ring the doorbell, try to find anyone?
Yes, we knocked on the doors, all the
Do they like put out how much these houses are worth? Like what was the value of the home that they were given? I don't know if Habitat for Humanity announces has to put that out to the public or not, but I'd be curious to know.
windows. We identified ourselves, as much as we could through the windows. We got no response.
Did you check the mailbox?
Yes.
Why did you check the mailbox?
To see if the mail had been checked, because they said they had not been seen for 2 days, and there was still mail in the mailbox.
And do you recall what the postmark was of that mail?
I don't remember.
We refresh your recollection, look at your report.
Yes.
Is that your report there?
Yes.
If you just take a moment and read it to yourself, not out loud. Don't say it out loud. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
What was the postmark of the mail in the mailbox?
June 8th, 2015.
So after you and the other deputies were not able to obtain the attention of anyone inside the residence and checking the mailbox, do you then continue to investigate this case, or you hand it off to someone? How does that work?
I called our on-call detective and informed him of the matter.
And then did they respond after the residence?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Anything with this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Any to excuse?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. You have another witness?
Yes, just one moment. State called Jim Stanley.
We zipped through this trial pretty quickly. Cosmic Crisp. I haven't heard of those either.
Oh, have a seat. Watch your step. People trip on that all the time. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause now pending before the court? True truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Have a seat. Yes, sir.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Jim Stanley.
How are you employed?
I am a owner of Forensic Fire Investigations here in Springfield, Missouri.
What does that business do?
We investigate fires and explosion incidents for the public sector.
Did you used to work for the Greene County Sheriff's Office?
I did.
When did you leave the Greene County Sheriff's Office?
December 28th of 2015
And why did you leave that?
to get into the private sector.
When you worked for the Sheriff's Office, how long did you work for them?
I was started in March of 2001.
And what types of duties did you have during the time you were with the Sheriff's Office?
Initially, I was hired as a patrol officer, then I was promoted up to patrol sergeant. I was promoted into the detective division, and before I left the Greene County Sheriff's Office, I was a supervisor sergeant over the property crimes division.
Can you talk a little bit about what it means to be in the detective division of the Sheriff's Office?
Yes, for me, I did numerous types of crimes, violent crimes, I did property crimes. I was also a fire and explosion investigator, so I was detached Springfield Fire Department, where I served as a bomb tech on the bomb squad.
With regard, and did you work on any homicide investigations
I
as
did.
a detective?
Yes.
What kind of training did you have in that area?
I attended numerous seminars, trainings over the years. I attended some of the courses I've taken was practical homicide investigation techniques, major crimes investigator, major case squad training, and I'm a level 3 CSI through the Missouri Southern State College in Joplin.
And by CSI, you mean crime scene investigator?
Yes, sir.
You said that at the end of your time in the Sheriff's Office, you were a supervising sergeant?
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I had a group of 10 detectives that were under my command, and they were in the property crimes division, so they would investigate anything from burglaries to auto theft. They could go out on other things too as well to assist other scenes as far as homicides, violent crimes, arsons, any type of incident.
I want to draw your attention to June 14th of 2015. Were you working for the Sheriff's Office on that day?
Yes,
Did you have an occasion to be called out to 2103 West Volunteer Way?
I did.
Is that a location here in Greene County?
It is.
Why were you called out to that location?
I was called out by my lieutenant to respond in reference to possible suspicious circumstances. Once I arrived out at the scene, they told me that if there was a crime, I would be in charge of the crime.
You mean by charge of crime, you mean in charge of the crime scene?
Yes, correct.
And did you ultimately perform a search of 2103 West Volunteer Way?
I did.
Was that pursuant to a search warrant?
It was.
It's Exhibit 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to skip 13 through 18, 19, 20, 20A, 21, 22A and 22B, 22, 23, 24, 25,
This guy's probably like, I won't remember all this shit.
28, skipping 29 for the moment, 30, 31, 33, and 34. Have you seen those photographs before?
I have.
And in general, what do those photographs depict?
They depict generally the exterior of the residence working to the interior of the residence. The front door would be number 6.
Without going into detail of all of them, do they generally depict and document your search of the residence?
They do.
And are they fair and accurate representations of what the residence looked like, both outside and inside, during your search of the residence?
Yes.
At this time, I'd move to admit State's Exhibits 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
You had. Then you jumped to 19.
19, 20, 20A, 21, 22A, 22B, 22,
So annoying.
23, 24, 25, 27, 28, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34.
I don't know why.
No objection.
That we received without objection.
This guy's like, probably like, skip this one. He's like, hell, I'm not going to remember this.
A moment ago, you were starting to tell us how the residence spaced and where it was. Can you just briefly describe that to us as we look at State's Exhibit 1?
Yes. The front of the residence faces to the south. There is a purple colored Nissan Cube and a driveway and a ramp that goes up in front of the residence for a wheelchair.
And did you check the residence to see if there are any signs of forced entry?
I did.
Did you find any?
I did not.
So what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 2?
Looking at the driveway of the residence, the southeast corner of the exterior.
I still can't believe this is all a fucking scam. Unreal.
State's Exhibit 4?
Be the rear corner, which would be the north side, back of the residence.
State's Exhibit 5?
Be looking at the southwest corner of the residence.
And so in those exhibits 1 through 5, and we see all the windows and doors to the residence that you checked.
We did.
What are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 6?
We're looking at the front door leading to the entry, located on the south side porch.
And now what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 7?
Now we're looking from the front door that opens into the left. We're looking to the north down a long hallway.
So is that the door on the far left of the photograph there?
It is.
Okay. And I think so we're looking down the hallway. What is to our left if we were to step in and turn left?
That would be the living room.
It doesn't even look like her wheelchair would navigate that hallway very well. Like, you'd think that they would have built that house for a wider hallway.
And if we were to turn to our right, what would we find?
Immediately find a dining room and then a kitchen off just to the other side.
So we can see some of the appliances there.
Correct.
What are we looking at now?
We're looking at the dining room and partial kitchen.
God, it's
And
such a
later
mess.
there's going to be some items over here. What is this area of the kitchen?
That would be the corner of the table.
What are we looking at now? State's Exhibit 9.
We're looking at the west north wall of the living room. You have a couch and a wheelchair off to the left.
Is that what I'm highlighting there?
It is.
And this is the condition in which the living room was when you first entered the residence.
Yes.
Now what are you looking at in State's Exhibit 10?
Looking at the hallway to the north, we're looking at a bottle, spray bottle on the floor.
Is that what I highlighted there?
Correct.
And what is this over here in the hallway?
That is a black baseball style cap.
As we walk down this hallway, what do we find to our left?
The first room to the left
Yeah.
is a storage room.
Okay. And then the next door?
Would be a bathroom.
And is there a door beyond that?
There is a door beyond that, which would be a bedroom identified as Gypsy Rose Blanchard's bedroom.
Okay. And if we go down this hallway, down to the far end to our right, what do we find?
That would be the bedroom belonging to Claudine Blanchard.
For Claudine Blanchard.
Claudine, yes.
We're looking at here, and Stacy Goodall down the hallway to the left.
Correct.
Captions are dumb.
And what are we looking at here in Stacy Exhibit 12?
Room all the way down to the right, Claudine Blanchard, laying on the bed.
And is she in the bed here?
She is.
We're looking at here in State's Exhibit 19.
We're looking at a trash can next to the bed, would be on the east side of the bed against the wall. And there would be a,
And in State's Exhibit 20, is it just a close-up?
it is, and that would be like a white,
Is that depicted here in State's Exhibit 20A?
it is.
Where are we looking at now in State's Exhibit 21?
Have you guys seen the crime scene photos of Dee Dee Blanchard and what they did to her? It is atrocious. It's horrible.
We are looking at the southwest corner of Claudine Blanchard's bedroom with a plastic bottle of suspected cleaning solution.
Similar to the bottle we saw in the hallway earlier.
Yes.
What are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 22?
This is an overall of the bathroom with a wheelchair in the center of the bathroom.
And we're going to get to it in a minute, but there's a laundry basket there over to the left by the tub.
Yes.
And then when you're looking in this room, you also look at the sink area there to the right and items beside the sink.
Correct.
We're looking at here in State's Exhibit 22A.
We're looking at the door leading into the bathroom, and we're
I
looking.
see something right there that I'm pointing at with the pointer. What was that consistent with in your training experience?
Blood evidence.
And now in State's Exhibit 22B, what are we looking at?
Let's take that in close up.
State's Exhibit 23, what are we looking at?
We're looking at a disposable razor that's in a laundry basket.
And now State's Exhibit 24, what do we see?
Looking at a roll of paper towels next to the sink.
State's Exhibit 25, what is that?
That is the top section of the roll of paper towels with suspected blood.
And do you have that map pointer there?
Yes.
You may want to step down to show what he's talking about.
Of course. Talking about right here is we have droplets here, 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 and then we have kind of a smudge mark here.
Thank you.
Snurk, if you're in here, I know that you know this case well, or anybody else that knows this case well. I haven't looked at Nick's appeal documents yet, because I've been trying to avoid things that are in advance and just trying to go in order and basically not taint my mind of what's to come. But my question is Nick's appeal based on ineffective counsel, or and the reason I asked that is because if it is, I was just going to pay attention to how his legal counsel defends this case.
I'm going to show you what's been marked in State's Exhibit 26, right? Application, you recognize that?
I do.
And what is it?
That would be the recovered roll of paper towels.
And 26 is actually the paper bag, correct?
That is correct.
And is the bag you can place that roll of paper towels from State's Exhibit 25 into?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because I've dated it, I placed my initials on the evidence tape.
And so this writing we see on the front of the bag, is that yours?
The writing here would be from Detective Walls, who assisted at the scene in some crime scene.
Ken, you mentioned the evidence tape. How do you know that's your evidence tape?
That is my initials, my date.
And then on the front, next to the exhibit sticker,
That is a property evidence barcode.
Let's see, Bliss Chris, you said yes, ineffective counsel and no trial strategy. Okay. So yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering, because I was going to pay extra attention to how his lawyer, his defense attorney, I'm assuming that it's a court-appointed attorney. I'm assuming he didn't have the funds to hire private counsel, but I was just curious because if that was the case, I was just going to pay closer attention to how they defend him in this. Oops, what am I doing? I just put, oh, enter does that.
That is a property
Hello,
evidence barcode.
Glennis.
So when we fill those out, we place them onto the bag, so we turn the property.
and it identifies this as a roll of paper towels.
It does.
Now there's some blue tape on here as well. In your experience, what is that consistent with?
That could be consistent with a lab or laboratory.
And this label on the back, is that also consistent with the lab?
It is.
Other than the fact that it has this bar sticker from the lab on the back and the blue tape from the lab, is this evidence bag with paper towels in substantially the same condition as when you took it from the residence at 2103 West Volunteer Street?
It is.
I move to admit State's Exhibit 26.
No objection.
Will be admitted without objection.
What are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 27?
May I sit down?
Yes.
We're looking at suspected blood droplet here in the sink.
And did you do something to try to collect that suspected blood droplet from the sink?
I did.
What did you do?
Took a DNA swab.
And what are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 28?
We were looking at the swab here that was used to collect the sample. You can see the red stain on the tip of the DNA swab.
Okay. Go ahead, have a seat. Now I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 29 for identification. Do you recognize that?
I do.
How do you recognize State's Exhibit 29?
It has my writing, the date, and my initials on the front of the evidence tape.
And does it also have a sticker and some blue tape consistent with the crime lab?
It does.
Other than the fact that it has those crime lab markings on it, well, 29.
29 would be the possible blood swab collected from the sink.
That we see in State's Exhibit 28.
Correct.
Other than the fact that it has the lab markings on it, is it in substantially the same condition as when you took that swab?
It is.
I move to admit State's Exhibit 29.
No objection.
Will be received without objection.
All right, what are we looking at here now in State's Exhibit 30?
We're looking at receipts and the Missouri driver's license of Dee Dee Blanchard, as well as a debit card.
Hey, where are we looking at this?
I'm sorry.
Where in the house are we?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's in the kitchen area on the kitchen table.
All right, and so behind the kitchen table up here, it looks like there's like mosaic or some kind of stained glass or something. What is it we're looking at up there on State's Exhibit 30?
That's actually a window covering over the window.
That looks kind of like stained glass applied to it?
Imitation.
I think it's like a film.
It is.
State's Exhibit 31, what are we looking at?
We're looking at Dee Dee Blanchard's Missouri driver's license, as well as a debit card, and I believe another card.
And that's where you saw them on the table there?
Yes. I did.
Is that what we see in State's Exhibit 32?
Yes.
So now what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 33?
On the left corner of the table, we're looking at a plastic tub.
Are you talking about this over here?
I am.
Okay. And did you find something of interest in that tub?
I did.
What was it?
It was a box of blue latex gloves.
Is that what we're looking at here in State's Exhibit 34?
It is.
This is such a mess.
Commissioner, with the marked for identification in State's Exhibit 35. Do you recognize what's depicted in State's Exhibit 35?
I do.
In general, what is it?
It is a bank bag in the top left drawer of the dresser that sits next to the bed.
In which room?
Body and electric room.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of that bag in that drawer?
It is.
I move to admit State's Exhibit 35.
No objection.
Be received without objection.
Would you use your pointer and point out the bank bag we're talking about?
Yes. It's right here, and it's the Community National Bank bag, top of the drawer.
I mean, what is this item to the up and to the right of the
Oh,
bank
God,
bag?
no, that
That
sounds
would be a
slow.
roll of duct tape.
Okay, thank you. No further questions?
Mr. Speed, anything?
No questions, Your Honor.
Can this witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Officer, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Folks, we can go about an hour and 10 minutes here. I think it might be a good time for a little break. I want to again remind you of what you were told at the first recess of the court. Until you retire to consider your verdict, you must not discuss this case among yourselves and others, or permit anyone to discuss it in your hearing. You should not form or express any opinion about the case until it's finally given to you to the case or anyone involved or listen. About 11:07, why don't we come back by? Or you can pass them down. Whoever. Let me know.
At least
We
they
usually go
cut
for
this
chocolate
down.
in the afternoon and Jolly Ranchers in the morning, if that's okay with everybody. All right. Mr. Patterson, and we're getting, I understand we ran out of hot chocolate, so we're getting more hot chocolate brought up. Mr. Patterson, or Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state called Tom Vandiver.
Sir, come on up. Are these lined up?
Yes,
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. How are you? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you please state your name?
Thomas J. Vandenberg.
And could you maybe spell your last name for the record?
It is Vandeberg.
Sir, what is your current occupation?
I am the Chief Forensic Investigator with the Greene County Medical Examiner's Office.
In general, what is the Greene County Medical Examiner's Office?
The Medical Examiner's Office is tasked by statute with investigating any sudden unexpected death or any death that is suspicious or caused by any kind of violence.
What are your current duties right now as Chief Forensic Investigator?
As the Chief Forensic Investigator, I supervise the 4 other investigators in the office. I assist with autopsies, I do death scene investigations, and I do the administrative paperwork side of the office also.
How long have you been Chief Forensic Investigator?
17 years.
Before being the Chief Investigator, did you work for the Medical Examiner's Office in another capacity?
Yes, I was an investigator for 4 years before becoming the Chief Investigator.
Was that pretty much the same duties without all the supervisor stuff?
It was actually mostly on-call, part-time. I also worked as a paramedic at that time.
And where did you work as a paramedic?
I worked my last 5 years as a paramedic here in Springfield for Mercy Hospital.
Where did you start your career as a paramedic?
I started in Sioux City, Iowa. I obtained EMT and then EMT intermediate and paramedic training through Western Iowa Tech Community College. Worked in Sioux City, worked in Southern California, Nebraska, Montana, and then back to Iowa before moving here.
And how many total years did you work as a paramedic?
20 years.
What is your educational background?
I have an associate's degree in police science. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration, and I have a master's degree in forensic science.
Did you initially receive some specialized training to become a paramedic?
Yes.
And what was that training?
That training was, it's a 1,200-hour paramedic training curriculum that includes classroom and practical training in emergency medicine, anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and everything to do with working as a paramedic in pre-hospital.
Then did you receive specialized training specifically in investigating death scenes?
Yes.
And what was that?
In January 1996, I attended the St. Louis University Medical Legal Death Investigation Training course. I also, later in 1996, attended the Medical Legal Death Investigation Training course put on by the State Medical Examiner in Iowa, which is where I was working at the time. And then I've taken multiple continuing education trainings in all different aspects of forensic investigation.
And do you have any certifications?
I am certified as a fellow by the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators.
As a forensic investigator, is it fair to say that your duties can be split up between investigation on scene and then assistance during autopsies?
Yes.
Can you describe what is it that you do as an investigator in general when you're actually on the scene?
After death scene, we are summoned typically by law enforcement who is already there. Initially, on arrival, we make contact with the lead investigator from law enforcement, get a summary of what's going on. We start taking photographs of the outside of the scene, and then photograph as we go into the scene, gather all the information we can about the deceased, and then we observe and record what we see at the scene, and then do a examination of the deceased, and then.
Have you guys ever, like in person, real life, witnessed an autopsy? And if you haven't, do you think that you could do it? Or would you not be able to sit through something like that? Like, I think that I would be able to do it, but then I really don't know if I could. When it really comes down to it, I don't know.
Package the deceased for transportation for autopsy if that's required.
Then when you are assisting in an autopsy, what are your duties?
When I assist with the autopsy, typically it's myself and the forensic pathologist. I get the body out, weigh the body, get all the containers and everything set up for the autopsy. Then I take the photographs during the autopsy. I assist with measurements and weighing and documentation as directed by the pathologist. And then I also assist the pathologist in opening the body, removing the organs for their examination.
As the forensic pathologist is conducting the autopsy, are you also personally observing what, if any, injuries may be present?
Yes, the pathologist is on one side of the table, I'm on the other, and we're working together.
And does that include both the injury, if present, on the surface level of the body, as well as any damage that may be caused internally?
Yes.
And has your training and experience allowed you to become familiar with human anatomy?
Yes.
Which specific training?
All the way through EMT and paramedic training, death investigation training. In my forensic master's degree, we had 2 forensic pathology courses that went heavily into anatomy and physiology of the body.
And then has a portion of your training experience also been on being able to determine what mechanisms cause certain injuries?
Yes.
In which specific parts of your training?
And mechanism of injury was very important in pre-hospital care and paramedic training because you had to anticipate injuries that didn't show up right away by examining the mechanism of injury and what could possibly be injured that you don't see right away.
I'd like to call your attention to the early morning hours of June 15th of 2015, where you called out to 2103 West Volunteer Way.
Yes, I was.
Can you describe what initially brought you to that location?
I was called by the sheriff's office with the information that there was a homicide at that location.
Homicide.
When you arrived on scene, about what time of day or night was it?
I arrived on the scene shortly before 2 a.m.
Fair to say there were a lot of police and other personnel there?
Yes.
When you first arrived on scene, what were some of the first things that you did?
I met with Detective Stanley, who was the lead investigator at the scene, got a synopsis of what was happening, that there was a deceased female, that they had gone into the residence, done their initial observations, but had not touched the body at that point. At that point, we put on protected clothing, a Tyvek suit, boot covers, gloves, photographed the external area of the scene, and then we entered through the front door of the residence.
Glennis, this trial was November of 2018. So this was the trial for Nick Godejohn. At the time, that was Gypsy Blanchard's boyfriend. And so we're just doing a look back basically on his trial. So I'm starting from day one. It's not a long trial, but we're just basically going for, oh my goodness, JJ. Thank you so much. You were so sweet. Thank you so much, JJ. I appreciate that. You were so sweet. I'm just going to keep going. Let's see who got them. We've got Mara Helk, Rose, Kels, Patty, Sophie, Kendra, Susie, Shauna, Madam Butterfly, Glennis, you got one. Oh, still going. There's Susie. Thank you again, JJ. You're so sweet. I know I keep saying that. I think there's one more alert. I actually don't know if I've ever been gifted that many. That might be a first. So I thank you.
Once you were
You're
inside
such a
the
good friend,
residence,
JJ.
Took photographs going through of the kitchen, dining area, living room, bathroom and another bedroom that the door was open, and then started photographing into the room where the decedent was.
And did you later learn her name was Claudine Blanchard?
Yes.
Once you were in the room where Ms. Blanchard's body was, how did you conduct your investigation?
We start from the doorway, noting the condition of the room, what lights are or aren't on, position of furniture, position of other items around the room, and then work into the body, observing the body in the position found, and with, in this case, the coverings, the bed coverings, covering most of the body.
Did you ultimately observe any injuries?
Yes. As we went up to the actual body, there were several defects which appeared from sharp injury through the back of the clothing. She was laying face down on the bed. Arms were up with hands kind of underneath her face, and there was blood saturating the back of the nightgown that she was wearing, and blood also on the bedding.
Once you made those observations, then what was the next thing you did?
And then once we moved the bedding down, moved the clothing up, we did observe several apparent stab wounds across the upper back.
Yeah. Aside from the injuries that you've talked about, was there anything else that you could determine about the condition of Ms. Blanchard's body?
Rigor mortis was passing, which takes 24 to 36 hours for rigor mortis to be firm and then start to pass after 24 to 36 hours. Her rigor mortis was passing. Her face and the dependent level of her body, the front, was very dark, and the skin was starting to slip when we moved her body, which is another indication that death had been at least 36 hours prior.
Then did you eventually make arrangements to have Ms. Blanchard's body transported for autopsy?
Yes, we rolled her over, looked for other injuries, secured her in a body bag. We put a identification tag on the left ankle at the scene, and then we put a locking seal on the body bag. We, at this scene, had another investigator who came out with the van, and we transported her to the medical examiner's office at that point.
Is that then when her autopsy was conducted?
Her autopsy was conducted, I believe we started just before 1 o'clock that same day in the afternoon.
In general, I should have asked this earlier, what is an autopsy?
An autopsy is a complete examination of the body used to determine the cause of death and help to determine the manner of death.
Did you assist in Ms. Blanchard's autopsy?
Yes, I did.
Who was the medical examiner or forensic pathologist?
Dr. Jeff Harkey was the medical examiner at that point.
And was there anyone else present during the autopsy besides yourself and Dr. Harkey?
Yes, there were detectives from the Greene County Sheriff's Office that were present at the autopsy.
In a case like this of a suspected homicide, is that unusual to have law enforcement there while you're doing the autopsy?
No, that is standard, that law enforcement attends any autopsy for a suspicious death.
Prior to examining Ms. Blanchard's injuries, did you do some preliminary evidence collection?
Once the body bag is open and we put evidence bags on the hands at the scene, those bags are removed one at a time. The hands are photographed. We did collect all the specimens for a sexual assault kit, which is standard in a homicide that we do that. That included clipping the nails, swabs of the mouth, vaginal swabs and rectal swabs, and combings and pulled hairs, both pubic and head hairs.
And specifically with the swabbing of the mouth, what's that called?
It's a buccal swab, and it's a swab that we just rub the inside of the cheek for any DNA material that may be there.
Okay, I officially don't think I could sit through an autopsy if you have to swab a butthole or a vagina of a dead person. Like, nope. You can count me out.
And in your experience, is that type of swab of the cheek typical to obtain a sample of that person's own DNA?
Yes.
Now, when you were collecting the swabs from Ms. Blanchard, what did you do with them after you had collected them?
I collected the swabs and handed them directly to one of the detectives from the sheriff's office, who then packaged those and collected the whole kit.
Did you make any preliminary observations on the clothing of Ms. Blanchard?
She was wearing a nightgown and it had multiple holes in the back and a few holes on the side, I believe.
Then after the preliminary examination, did you go ahead and examine Ms. Blanchard's body for injury?
Yes.
And did you photograph that process?
Yes, I did.
Like this is a part of like, okay, so you've got this public trial going on, and it was obviously drew a lot of attention. Well, I've seen the crime scene photos, and many of you may have seen them, but she had no bottoms on. So it was just like full on vag and hairy butthole, like her ass cracked. And I'm not even exaggerating on that. But it's, hi, kind of crazy Karen. I can be a Karen too, so welcome. Now you've got this public trial, and it's like, I know that she's deceased, but at the same time, like if that was my loved one, I don't know. I would hate to see my loved one's coochie like all over the big screen, or, just available through FOIAs. Like, I don't know. It just, that would upset me. Like, I feel like you completely lose your dignity, even though you're deceased. Hey, Lydia. Same, Bliss Chris.
First, show you what has been marked as State's Exhibits 13 through 18. If you could just take a second and look at those. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What are they?
Those are photographs from the scene of Ms. Blanchard as she was found in her bed and then packaged in a body bag.
And do the images of Ms. Blanchard in those photographs fairly and accurately depict how she looked when you saw her?
Yes.
Then I'm going to show you what I have marked as State's Exhibits 36 through 41, if you could take a moment and look through those. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What are they?
Those are photographs taken at the autopsy of Ms. Blanchard.
And do they fairly and accurately reflect how she looks during the autopsy?
Yes.
And then lastly, State's Exhibit 42, do you recognize what that is?
That is a short form Missouri death certificate.
And is that for Claudine Blanchard?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would seek to admit State's Exhibits 13 through 18.
Oh, no objection.
We receive without objection.
And admissions of 36 through 42.
Not to 6
No
years.
objection, Your Honor.
We receive without objection.
Your Honor, due to the sensitive nature of these photographs, may I publish them by giving each juror their own packet that has a copy of them rather than show them on the screen?
Yes. Are you going to have the witness describing the those here?
Yes. And you can refer to your copy if that's okay. What are we looking at here and what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 1?
That is the outside front of Ms. Blanchard's residence with a vehicle parked in the driveway beside it.
And then flipping to the next page, what's depicted in State's Exhibit 12?
That is the view into Ms. Blanchard's bedroom from the doorway.
Flipping to the next page, what's in State's Exhibit 13?
And that is a closer image of Ms. Blanchard as she was found from the right side.
Flipping to the next page.
And that was the photograph taken from the left side, from beside the bed of Ms. Blanchard.
And looking in State's Exhibit 14, is that blood basically that's kind of soaked there through her nightgown?
Yes, the back of the nightgown was saturated and was mostly dried at the time that I saw it.
And it looks like then that pink sheet lower than that, and then ultimately the comforter also had some blood?
Yes.
Other than that, did you observe any kind of blood that flew onto the walls or anything like that?
Not that I observed. When I was there, it was early morning and we were in suboptimal lighting conditions.
And what is that called when blood kind of projects from the body?
Cast off, when an item is withdrawn that has blood on it, blood is cast off of that item, and blood spatter is the overall forensic field of looking at the blood evidence left at the scene.
Then flipping to State's Exhibit 15, what are we looking at?
That is the initial lifting the back of the nightgown to see some of the wounds on Ms. Blanchard's back.
State's Exhibit 16, flipping to the next page, what is that?
That is a large wound on the back of the neck. And you also have wounds on the right side of the neck that are visible in this picture also.
Then flipping to the next page, State's Exhibit 17, what is that?
That is after we were able to move Ms. Blanchard onto a body bag onto the other side of the bed to prepare for transporting her. The locking seal has been placed on the body bag and her name and the autopsy number were written on the back.
And then flipping to State's Exhibit 18, what are we looking at there?
That is a close-up of the locking seal that shows the individual number for that seal. Each seal has its own unique number.
And fair to say what we've just looked at, Exhibits 13 through 18 were all pictures that were taken at the scene.
Yes.
Now, going back for a moment to the autopsy, when it came time to inspect the body of Ms. Blanchard for injury,
Yes.
Were you there personally present?
Yes, I was.
And did you personally observe each injury on the external part of her body?
Yes.
Did you personally observe what, if any, damage those external injuries caused to the inside of her body?
I did.
In general, what type of injuries did Ms. Blanchard have?
She had both stab wounds and incised or cutting wounds.
How many stab wounds did she have?
She had 17 stab wounds.
And how many
Cutting
incised wounds?
wounds. I don't remember
There
cutting
were two
wounds.
large incised wounds, but they appeared to have been a series of cuts to cause those two large wounds.
Given I guess, which
she did have a
general
big
part of her body
slice on her
were the
neck,
stab
though.
wounds to?
The stab wounds were primarily over the upper back. There was one stab wound on the right side, and there was one stab wound just above the collarbone on the right side on the front, and two in the back of the head.
Now, of the wounds on the neck, you mentioned that there were both stab wounds and those incised wounds.
Yes.
I agree, Glennis.
Based on your training and experience, what causes an incised wound?
A sharp object drawn across in a cutting motion to cause a large cut injury.
If we flip to the next page, which is State's Exhibit 36, what are we looking at there?
That is the body bag at the autopsy, showing that the locking seal is still intact, and we have added the autopsy number, little scale. We put in all the photographs taken at autopsy.
Then if you flip the page, what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 37?
That is the incised wound on the back of the neck to the left side of the page, and on the right side of the page is the large incised wound to the right side of the neck, which in this photograph there are several wounds that look like they run together into one large wound on the right side.
And specifically, kind of up there towards the top, that more circular wound, what type is that?
It appears that that was a stab wound, and there were 2 stab wounds to the back of the head, just right at the top of the neck.
And in your training and experience, would those be caused by a different mechanism than the incised wounds?
Well, a stabbing is a puncture going straight in or at an angle, but to just puncture the skin and hit whatever's underneath, as opposed to the cutting motion of a incised wound.
And then if you flip the page, State's Exhibit 38, what are we seeing in this
I
picture?
didn't realize the wounds on
In
her
this
neck
picture,
were
it shows
2
the,
wounds that are 2
Both wounds,
that
the
met
large incised
together.
wounds, but it also does show there's a stab wound behind the right ear, at the back of the head, just at the top of the neck, and then also the larger incised wound on the right side of the neck.
And then if we flip the page to State's Exhibit 39, what is this picture focusing on?
This shows multiple superficial wounds on the right side of the neck going down towards the shoulder, and it shows the clear forked tails in that large wound on the right that indicate it was several cutting motions for that wound. The other wounds on the right are very superficial and just one peeled some superficial skin, and several of them are just scratches.
Now, in regard to the incised wound on the back of the neck, were you able to tell how deep that was?
That wound did go all the way into where it was in contact with the bone of the cervical spine, and it contacted that between the 6th and 7th cervical vertebrae.
And how about the depth of the incised wound on the side?
The wound on the right side also went down to the cervical spine until it contacted the bone.
If you flip to State's Exhibit 40, what is this a photograph of?
That is a photograph of Ms. Blanchard's back taken from the right side.
And there are numbers there. What do those signify?
Dr. Harkey numbered each wound, and this shows the numbers 1 through 14 for the stab wounds on the back.
And of those 14 wounds there on the back, were there certain ones that caused significantly more damage than others?
Of these wounds, wound number 3, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 12, and number 14 penetrated into the chest cavity, and a couple of them on into the abdominal cavity of Ms. Blanchard.
And if you go ahead and flip to State's Exhibit 40,
Wait, into her chest cavity and her wait, how's that if she was on her back? Am I missing something here? Or does, I mean, I know I'm not a medical professional, but that's confusing to me.
what is this exhibit?
This is a photograph that I initialed when I circled those 6 wounds that penetrated into the body cavities and damaged internal structures.
If we start with wound number 3, what was the internal damage caused on that?
Wound number 3 went into the left side of the chest. It damaged the left lung, went into the pericardial sac, and then went into the left atrium of the heart.
And how about wound number 5?
Wound number 5 went into the left or the right side of the chest and damaged the the right lung, and I believe it may have also penetrated into through the diaphragm and into the liver.
In wound number 6.
Wound number 6 penetrated into the right side of the chest and into the right lung.
Number 7.
Wound number 7 penetrated into the right side of the chest and into the right lung.
Wound number 12.
Wound number 12 penetrated into the chest and into the right lung.
And lastly, number 14.
And number 14 penetrated into the chest, into the right lung, and then I believe it also went through the diaphragm into the liver.
If you go ahead and flip to the last page, State's Exhibit 42, can you describe this exhibit?
This is a copy of the Missouri death certificate for Dee Dee Blanchard.
And when are these issued?
These are issued after the certifying doctor has enough information to make the determination of the cause and manner of death.
And it says there next to date of death, June 14th, 2015.
Yes.
Is that meant as the actual date of her death?
No, that is actually the date found. When we don't know the specific day of the death, we put on the death certificate the date that the body is found.
And ultimately, what was the listed cause of death?
The cause of death is listed as stab wounds.
Like that moment ago.
Yeah.
I don't have any further questions. I do.
I wonder if any of those stab wounds caused immediate death, or if she
No.
lived through any of that for a while, because that would be awful.
My question would be, you can't tell us the order of these stab wounds, is that correct?
That is correct.
You can't tell us the time frame that these stab wounds occur, is that correct?
The stab wounds would appear to be at the time of death, so very closely within minutes of the time of death, and that certainly appeared to be more than 36 hours from the condition of the body, from the time I examined her early morning on June 15th.
Okay, you can't tell us the time frame as relation to the other injuries. In other words, they all occur in a very short period of time, in your opinion?
Yes, all appear to have occurred in a very short time.
And almost all of the injuries were on the back, at least all the stab wounds, correct?
Correct.
And there was one stab wound kind of on her, it looks like her right shoulder, kind of on the side or just barely in front.
Yes.
That would be consistent with maybe her lifting up and the process of the stabbing continuing, correct?
It could be that.
And then she had some injuries on her hand.
There was one incised wound on the ring finger of, I believe, the left hand.
And there were stab wounds and incised wounds, correct?
Correct.
And stab wounds, would, as you demonstrated earlier, would be stabbing motion.
Yes.
And incised would be more of a slice or a cut.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned rigor mortis. When did that normally start after one passes away?
Rigor mortis starts to set in within several hours. It's determined by the temperature and activity at the time of death, how soon it really starts. But by 6 to 8 hours, rigor mortis is firm, and after 24 to 36 hours, rigor mortis passes away again.
Okay, and when you say passes away, tell us what that means.
The body is in the position, but when we move an extremity, it doesn't try to go back to that position. It's flaccid once we move.
And your best guess as to time of death would have been about 36 hours before she was found?
That was a minimum. It could have been longer than that.
That's all put by Judge.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness speak to you?
Yes, on behalf of
Rigor mortis creeps me out.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Excuse, if you would take those exhibit folders and pass them down to the witness, please. I'm assuming you're not going to use them in the next one.
Correct.
One over here, if you would. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Alice. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you please state your name?
Ben Julian,
Mr. Julian, what's your current occupation?
I'm self-employed.
Doing?
I sell used industrial equipment.
And how long have you done that?
Just slightly over 3 years.
What did you do before owning your own business?
I was a detective sergeant here at the Greene County Sheriff's Office.
What were your duties as a detective sergeant?
Follow through with investigations of crimes, mostly felony crimes.
How long total were you with the sheriff's office?
August 22nd, I believe, of 2009 to July 30th of 2015.
And specifically back in June of
Looks young.
2015, what were your duties?
I was a detective sergeant.
In which unit was that in?
Person.
Okay. And probably like it sounds.
Person's crimes.
All right. Specifically on June 14th of 2015, did you become involved in an investigation involving the death of Claudine Blanchard?
Yes.
How did you initially become involved?
I was called out that night to their residence and began doing neighborhood canvas was what I was assigned to do.
Were you already on duty when you were called out, or were you?
No.
Okay.
I was
off duty.
off, yes.
And was one of your tasks to attend Ms. Blanchard's autopsy?
Yes.
And what date was that?
It was July 15th, 2015.
June.
I'm sorry, June. Sorry, I apologize.
Have you investigated homicides before?
Yes.
And is it common for an investigator to be present there during the autopsy?
Yes.
Why is that?
To collect evidence, record findings, photographs.
And did you take any part in collecting evidence during Ms. Blanchard's autopsy?
Yes.
Can you describe what you did?
From start to finish, basically collected the body containment bag she was in, the seal for that. Her hands were sealed within bags by our crime scene investigators from the scene, so I collected those and they were removed. There was a necklace and her clothing I collected, and then DNA type evidence swabs, pulled hairs from her head, pulled pubic hairs, combed pubic hairs, fingernail clippings from both hands, and then buccal swabs from her mouth, vagina, and anus.
And were all of those swabs and different things kind of contained into one kit?
Individually packaged, yes.
Okay. And was it in a rape kit?
Yes.
Who actually took the samples?
Forensic investigator Tom Vandenberg.
Now, were you present when he
Yes.
took them, and then did you yourself collect them?
Yes, after each one I immediately collected them and put them in their respective package.
Did you make any marking on them so that to document the fact that you were collecting them?
Yes.
And what was that marking?
My initials and my DSN number, 704.
And you mentioned buccal swab. What's a buccal swab?
It's basically a swab that will collect DNA samples from whatever it's in contact with, the mouth, commonly done.
And also can those be called oral swabs as well?
Yes.
And specifically, did you collect the oral swab of Ms. Blanchard?
Yes.
And what did you do with it after it was handed to you?
Packaged it in its separate box, and then it was placed into my evidence bag. Basically, I put it back in that sexual assault kit, and then later finalized my packaging and submitted it to our property room.
Not approach you.
Yes.
I'll show you what I've marked as State's Exhibit 43. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
That is my handwriting on that. It says oral swab and the time, 13:12 hours.
And is this oral swab the one that was taken of Ms. Blanchard during her autopsy?
Yes.
And is it in the same or substantially same condition with your marking as it was when you collected it?
Yes.
Your Honor, the State would seek to admit State's Exhibit 43.
No objection.
It'll be received without objection.
And I don't have any further questions.
Any questions of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
They need to be excused.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Yes.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
the last one.
We have another one? Yes, sir.
State Court Sergeant Steve Martin.
Just kidding.
Come on
I
up,
sound
officer.
like such a prude, but like plucking pubic hairs off a deceased person does not sound like a good time. Is Gypsy in the courtroom? Not on this
Oh,
day.
I need to swear.
Nick is though.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause now pending for the court will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Steve Martin
How are you employed?
with the Greene County Sheriff's Office,
And how long have you worked for this Greene County Sheriff's Office?
December of 2007, so 11 years.
What is your current assignment?
Patrol supervisor.
And you're a sergeant.
Yes.
What do you do as a patrol supervisor?
My job is to supervise the daily activities of the officers on the street, currently taking calls for service, making traffic stops, etc.
How is it different being a patrol sergeant versus being a detective sergeant?
Patrol sergeant is handling the day-to-day stuff as far as in-progress type calls, whereas as a detective, it's kind of a reactive approach, so to speak.
I want to take you back to June of 2015 and July of 2015. Were you working in the detective division at that time?
I was.
What was your general assignment? What were you typically doing?
I was assigned to the property crimes division at the time, during that time.
And even though you were in the property unit, would you help on a case such as a homicide?
Yes.
Can you explain why you would do that if you're in the property section?
As a detective within the sheriff's office, you can be tasked with many different aspects of the job. So a lot of different detectives within the division know different assignments, have different skills, I guess, as you would say.
As part of your investigation, let me back up. Did you become involved in part of the investigation of the death of Claudine Blanchard?
I did.
And as part of that investigation, were you assigned to look into where a person named Nicholas Godejohn had been,
Yes.
as well as Gypsy Blanchard?
Yes.
And as part of that, did you respond to the Days Inn here in Springfield?
I did.
Have you received information about them checking out on or about the June 11th and or June 12th
I did.
of that year? Were you able to obtain some surveillance video that showed one or both of them?
Yes.
Who did the surveillance video show in general?
It showed generally Mr. Godejohn, but it also, we believed it was a female gypsy as well on the surveillance.
And so in the surveillance video, was it at more than one location within the Days Inn?
Yes.
What locations specifically?
The front desk and also in a hallway where an elevator is located.
And so, for example, at the front desk, who was seen on the surveillance video?
The defendant, Mr. Godejohn.
And you called someone the defendant. You see someone you know as Nicholas Godejohn here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Would you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
He's sitting at the defendant's table wearing a white with a tan kind of checkered shirt.
The record reflect identification of the defendant?
It was so reflect.
And then you mentioned seeing him and Gypsy Blanchard somewhere else. Where was it you saw them on the surveillance video?
Together, they were seen exiting an elevator in the hallway.
And you had an opportunity to view that surveillance video from June 11th and June 12th?
Yes.
And did it fairly accurately capture those locations at the Days Inn?
Yes.
Here the system was working properly?
Yes.
I'm surprised they don't show him at all.
A DVD that's been marked with State versus Nicholas Godejohn at the top and the case number. And then at the bottom it says State's Exhibits 46 and list them individually, the 46 through 67. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you recognize this disc?
Yes.
How do you recognize this particular disc?
Those are videos as well as, I believe, still photos from the surveillance video that came from Days Inn.
And so, particular Days In, it states Exhibits 46 through 49 and 55 through 62 on the disc, correct?
Yes.
And you've seen those on the disc?
Yes.
And did you do something to this disc so you would recognize it again?
I put my initials in the upper right corner.
And so I see some initials TT, which is not you, correct? And then just below that, SM for Steve Martin that issued.
Yes, sir.
It's always the boring
and
part of the
these
job.
states exhibits for identification 46 through 49 and 55 through 62 fairly and accurately represent that surveillance video of the front desk and of that elevator location at the Days Inn on June 11th and June 12th, 2015.
Yes.
Nothing further at this time.
You're not offering it, correct?
It's not offering at this time.
Mr. Lee, Mr. Perry, any questions?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Sir?
Dr. Martin, you had an opportunity to review that disc prior to today,
Yes.
and it showed Mr. Godejohn arriving there at the hotel.
Shows him at the front desk, yes.
And does it show him checking in?
Yes.
And do you know what manner of payment he used in checking in?
I do know.
All right, thank you, sir.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further?
No, sir.
May he be excused?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We have another, well, we can show you this, sir. We can just do it
And the
time.
morning witnesses, Your Honor.
All right. Well, folks, be a good time for lunch with you. I want to again remind you of what you were told.
Okay, there's that. Now, I was just looking at the part 2 of the trial for day 1, and I was going to do all of it in one day, but it looks like the next part is at least 3 hours. So what I think I might do is I might actually break it up and either switch tomorrow for day 1 part 2. I already have it scheduled, and actually when I end this live it's going to automatically shoot you over to the scheduled live for tomorrow. Yeah, part 2 is 3 hours. And so I think what I'll do is I'll change the title and the thumbnail for the stream tomorrow, um, and do part 2 then instead, just to kind of break it up a little bit. And we'll go from there. But as soon as I end this live, it'll automatically shoot you over to the scheduled live for tomorrow. And you can hit the notification bell on it to be alerted on when I go live, rather than the same time it's going live an hour later tomorrow. But other than that, I think that what I'll do is I'll end this one so that way we can pick it up tomorrow. I appreciate everyone that has been here with me today, and I appreciate JJ. Thank you so much for um, gifting 10 memberships. It's very, very, very much appreciated. Sorry, I have zero voice right now. And I hope that you guys join me on the rest of this gypsy journey. And it means a lot to me. It really does. And your guys' kindness and just being here and supportive, it speaks volumes to me. So I appreciate all of you, and I hope to see you guys again tomorrow. Please hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, and I will see you guys tomorrow, and it will shoot you right over to that stream. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you later.